Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast. So this is part 2 of my 30 things that I learned in a very short time in business. So we finished off last time with lesson number 10, which was learning from failure. So lesson 11 is effective communication. So this for me again is key. This is your communication with your clients. This is your communication internally with staff. This is your internal monologue as well. This is an ability to communicate with everyone, to keep everyone up to date, and also to have that ability to not talk to yourself, that sounds a bit mad, but that ability to kind of almost question yourself and have that inner dialogue of, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And having those people to lean on as well. So one of the biggest things for me in terms of effective communication is making sure that clients are fully up to date of what is sort of going on in a deal at any one point, because it can be very easy as a client to look at the broker and go, well, things aren't moving. What's going on? Is this your fault? Is this the solicitor's fault? Is this the valuer's fault? Is this the lender's fault? What's going on? But by default, they look at that ring of people and say, well, actually, it's your fault because you're meant to be in control of that ring of people. So get them under control. So effective communication is really handy, because if you can have that communication between everyone involved, that's where obviously you can then go to the client and say, well, actually, the delay is with your solicitor. The delay is with the lender's solicitor. The delay is with the lender, whatever. So having that communication, that open line of comms is always great. And when it comes to internally, obviously you need to have that communication between yourself and your team, because at any one point they need to be able to pick stuff up. If you're not around, you need to be able to pick stuff up if they're not around. The other thing around communication as well is you need to be the middleman. So as a broker, as a sourcer, as a property investor, as a developer, whatever, you're always playing the middleman between lots and lots of different people. For us as brokers, it's that ability to bring together the solicitors, the lenders, the client, the QS, the valuer, get everyone into a call and go, right, this deal has gone on for way too long. We need to sit, we need to talk about it. We need to get to a point where everyone is happy and that we're moving forward. And that does take a lot of work to get to that point. But yeah, effective communication, without a shadow of a doubt, is a major thing moving forward. And if your communication skills are poor, I would highly recommend finding a way of improving them, or delegating that to someone else. Bring someone else who does have good communication into the mix. So big one for me. Lesson number 12 is networking. So I've spoken on a podcast previously purely around networking. And for me, networking has been the one and only reason why I am sat here right now. I went to a networking event back in 2016, I think it was, PPM Peterborough, and got talking to the host. Host then, obviously, as I've mentioned before, put me on stage, then got to kind of build up that confidence of being on stage. Hadn't really done any networking at this point, kind of got thrown in at the deep end of go and talk. You don't necessarily need to go and talk to people in the room, but here you go, here's a pedestal for you. Go and put yourself across as the expert in the room. And that then led to more speaking opportunities. And rather than becoming a serial networker, I became more of a serial speaker. And all of a sudden just puts you in that position where if you're at the front of the room talking about something, the networking comes to you. You haven't got to worry about going and finding it. So networking has been a massive thing for me, but I've kind of cheated in a way in that I've kind of found my way to the front of the room as opposed to networking around the room to begin with. But if it was me, I would always try and network with the host first, because they are the ones who can introduce you to everyone. And I was at an event recently, PPN Leamington Spa. I was the speaker, but kind of getting networking with the host then introduces you around the room, and all of a sudden you're having meaningful conversations off the back of a recommendation from someone else, which is always a good place to start. So networking, without a shadow of a doubt, get yourself to SaaS networking events if you're looking for investors, get yourself to all of the PPN events, all of the PIN events, get yourself to any property developer network events, all of those different events that are going on, get yourself to them and just get to meet as many people as possible, because you never know the skill set that someone's going to have in that room and what they can bring, and you may well meet a JV partner as well. Lesson 13 is customer feedback. This is one that took a long time for me to write, and it's because it's something that, again, I'm not very good at. I'm very, very bad at getting feedback from customers, and it's not from a fear perspective. It's not that I'm worried what clients are going to say. It's not that I'm worried that I've delivered a bad service. In fact, actually, it's the opposite. I don't really have much of an ego. And it's always a bit of a weird one, because you sit doing a podcast, you sit doing all this social media stuff, and people just assume you have an ego. But Actually, I don't. And I don't like praise. It's a weird one. Going out and getting that feedback, if people come back and say, oh yeah, I had a really good experience, blah, 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 weirdly makes me uncomfortable. But it's one of those things where I have got to get better at it, because there's nothing better than being able to put out on social media, here's some client feedback, here's a client testimonial, but it's also finding the time to do that as well. So it's definitely something I need to get better at. It's something that I've really, really struggled with. And I know loads of other businesses struggle with it as well, probably more from a time perspective than anything else. But I think if you can find a system that works, and I know that there are CRM systems out there that do it automatically for you, but if you can come up with a system whereby that feedback is gathered automatically, then without a shadow of a doubt, I would look into it and get it sort of something set up, because getting that feedback back is invaluable. Getting Google reviews, getting Trustpilot reviews, that kind of thing. People look into this kind of thing. So it's well worth sort of getting better at that. And it's something that I'm really trying to work on as well. Lesson number 14 is competitive analysis. So I spoke on this post about doing a SWOT analysis, which is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Can't believe I actually remember that without checking my notes. But doing a SWOT analysis is really strong. And I put in the post I've done a SWOT analysis, but whether I've actually done one or not is a different kettle of fish. But doing a SWOT analysis is probably the best way of checking what your competitors are up to, because you see what they do well, you see their strengths, you see, okay, they've got a really good social media presence. Why have they got a good social media presence? Then you see their weaknesses. Okay, they've missed something there. They're not doing that very well. They're putting out the wrong information. They're not selling themselves in the best way, whatever it may be. Then it's about seeing the opportunities. Right, okay, they've done that really well, but actually they've missed this bit of the market. For us, opportunities are always around first-time developers and creative finance. That's always been the opportunity that we've seen whenever we've done an analysis. Then threats is a bit of a weird one, because especially when you look at brokerage, it's like, well, what is the threat to me? Who brings a threat to the table? What could they possibly threaten to do? So that one I've always found a bit weird and never really got to the bottom of, is anyone a threat or not? Because, I mean, there's 66,000 brokers at last count in the country. So, I mean, there's 65,997 other threats, because obviously it's four of us. Realistically, you look at that and go, well, all of them are threats, because any of them, the client could go to any single one of them. So threats on that side is always a bit weird, but I would highly recommend doing SWOT analysis. Get a marketing manager or something to do it. That's what we did. We had our marketing manager went through all of the social media profiles of all of our competitors and use that to then set up campaigns, etc. Number 15 is ethical practices. So in this post, I think I touched on a lot around training, because for me, that is probably one of the most unethical spaces at the moment. When it comes to ethical practices, I'm talking about acting in the best interest of your clients, acting in the best interest of those around you, working in a way where you can sleep easy at night. So, for example, I mentioned on part one about when we were talking about adapting to change, I mentioned about how we didn't do the CBILS loans, we didn't get involved in brokering those, because from my perspective, that isn't an ethical practice. You are acting on a loan which more than likely that client isn't going to pay back. You are getting paid a fee on something which could put them into a worse position. And I feel really strongly about that. And I don't know why, but it always grinds my gears when I find out how much money brokers have made off of it. But there we go. They took an opportunity that I didn't want to take. When it comes to the training side of things, it's all around, I believe, acting in a way where you are actually training someone on something that you understand. There are far too many trainers out there who are charging 2, 3, 4, 5 grand, whatever it may be, for a weekend course, and haven't really done the thing that they've said that they're teaching. So I find that really bizarre, and that for me is only go to people who have done what they say. And yeah, a real ethical thing for me is just teach what you actually know. Don't teach something that you've gone and robbed off someone else. Lesson number 16, quality control. So this is about managing the quality of what goes out on social media, for example. So for us, we have had, I lose count how many marketing managers we've had, internal and external. There is a huge process involved in controlling the quality of what goes out, because as many of you will know, on social media, the quality of information that is put out there is questionable at best. So we have to make sure that what we put out there is correct, make sure that it's got the relevant disclaimers on it, make sure that it's able to be relied upon. Is probably the best way of describing it. So for me, that's a big thing, quality control of information that goes out there, and also quality control on the loan offerings that we put in front of clients as well, because we have to make sure that we're putting deals in front of clients for lenders who are going to work in the right way. And actually, this kind of touches on ethical practice as well a little bit. We need to make sure that the lenders we're putting in front of the clients work in an ethical way, that they're not just going to repossess at the first opportunity. So there's a massive amount of time that goes into quality controlling everything that goes out. And unfortunately, the same can't be said for some of the other posts that come out. So I think it's worth anything you see on social media, just take it with a pinch of salt. But obviously what we're trying to put out is something that can most definitely be relied upon. Lesson number 17 is around time management. So again, I kind of use these 30 lessons in 30 days as almost a bit of an accountability thing. So many of these lessons, I sort of start off with, I'm not very good at that. I don't do that very well. Because for me, it's all about identifying my weaknesses as well. I'm almost doing a bit of a SWOT analysis on myself. And this 30 lessons in 30 days has kind of shown that as well. So time management is another one that I'm not particularly good at the point of recording this podcast. We're a Friday. I think I've been out of the office every single day so far. And I think I've covered probably the best part of nearly 2,000 miles this week, because I say yes to absolutely everything. Every speaking opportunity that comes up, I say yes to. Every possibility to go and meet a client, I'll say yes to. Any phone call, I'll say yes to. There's literally nothing I can think of that I've said no to. So for me, it's about managing that time better. I need to learn to say no to some stuff. And this is a lesson that many people who are listening to this probably need to learn as well, is not everything needs to be a yes. Sometimes a no is actually better than a yes. So I think managing your time is the most, well, as everyone always says, is literally the most valuable commodity that you've got. You've only got a finite amount of it, and many people forget that you only have a finite amount of it. This has all gone a bit philosophical now, but managing your time is massively important. So for me, I'm going to learn to say no to a lot more stuff and say yes to the things that matter and the things that are going to add value to not only myself, but to the people that I'm dealing with as well. Because if I say yes to everything, I'm not going to be able to add the same quality to people that I would be able to if I sort of narrowed that down. Brings me nicely on to lesson number 18, which is delegate. I am actually quite good at this now, I think. I used to be bad at it. For the first 12 months of business, I was terrible at it. I would keep everything. No one else can do as good a job as I can do. I know best. I can do this the best. And I'd end up hiring people, and literally they would sit there with no work to do. And I would go, well, it's all right, I'll pick this up. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll do this. And I think that's where it gets quite difficult. So for the first 12 months, we had very, very little growth because I was at capacity. I was struggling to cope with my workload, yet I had 3 or 4 members of staff around me who had nothing to do. So delegation, a huge thing, whether it be VAs, whether it be bringing people in as full-time assets into the office, whatever it may be, learn to delegate as quickly as possible, because you will be surprised how quickly your business grows as soon as you learn to delegate. Also brings me nicely on to lesson number 19, which is training and development. So when it comes to training and development, you need to, this is kind of more of an internal thing. Obviously, we kind of touched on the property training sector. Obviously, you need to do some of the property training, obviously with the right people that will develop the right skills and abilities that you need kind of moving forward. But this is more about training internally. So one of the big things that we did is Alice, our office manager, was very passionate about HR. We didn't have an HR manager. We were outsourcing our HR. She wanted to do a university course. We then got her involved in a university course for HR. She then passed with flying colours, and she is now qualified as an HR manager. So for us, that is a massive benefit, because now we don't have to outsource our HR anymore. She's able to take that on. And it's, I think, a big accolade for us as well, and almost that sort of award to ourselves. Look, we've managed to build someone up internally as well. And I think it's always nice to be able to kind of share that. But training and development, without a shadow of a doubt, is one of the biggest things you can do for staff, because they're all going to have their own passions. They're all going to want to be able to stick around and stick with the business and bring new skills to the business. And being able to send them out to do training, development, etc., it allows you to not only keep up with the market, but also allows you to gain those skill sets internally rather than having to go out for new staff. Lesson number 20 is legal compliance, or just compliance in general, if you want to call it that. Compliance falls into one of four categories. So you've got your sort of what I would call legal compliance, which is sort of the title of this bit, but that's anything that falls under kind of UK law. So any laws, etc., that are relevant to your particular business, that's that compliance. You want to ensure that you're compliant with the laws and regulations. The second one is HR compliance. So this is making sure that you are, from an HR perspective, looking after staff, making sure that you've got all of your handbooks in place, your contracts, wages are sorted, etc. One of the biggest pitfalls, without a shadow of a doubt. Obviously, we have an HR manager internally now. Not many people do. I would highly recommend outsourcing HR if you can, because in a world that is changing constantly, HR is bloody impossible to keep up with. So I would highly recommend outsourcing that. Similarly, health and safety compliance, which is number 3. I would also look at outsourcing that as well if you're a developer. Obviously, health and safety is a massive part of your day-to-day. And obviously, if you don't do it, you can end up in prison, as you could with many of these compliance things. So outsourcing the health and safety, I think, is a massive thing as well. I'm not an expert on health and safety, don't profess to be by any stretch of the imagination. So I would definitely look at getting an expert in health and safety on board. And then the sort of last one that I want to cover is data compliance, obviously GDPR, making sure that data from clients is stored correctly, securely, whether it be G Drive, OneDrive, whatever. And then making sure that clients' personal information is also stored, so via your CRM system, whether it be Capsule, Zoho, Salesforce, whatever. Again, probably one of the biggest ones, making sure you're registered with the ICO, for example, which is the Information Commissioner's Office. Make sure you've got your data protection number in place. So all of this has got to be done within your data compliance. But again, probably something that I would look at outsourcing if I were you, because whilst you can do all of this stuff internally, bringing in experts allows you to learn from them and then put in the processes yourself to then do it yourself. But actually, do you want to spend the time on that? And again, it comes back to that time management thing of learning to do the right things with your time at the right time. Do you want to be doing things with your time that are going to earn you money, or do you want to be doing things with your time that are dealing with compliance and that sort of thing? So yeah, from that perspective, I would say anything compliance-wise, probably look at outsourcing. That brings us to an end of part 2. Look forward to doing part 3. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.